Welcome to the 1211 podcast, where we believe in the power of real people sharing real stories of how they've found real freedom in Jesus. Thank you for joining us. I'm Tabitha.
And I'm Jennifer, and we're truly glad you're here. Inspired by Revelation 12:11, they triumphed over him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. This podcast exists to remind you that your story has power and that sharing your story is a path to finding true freedom, not just for you, but for others too.
Every episode, we sit down with someone who's seen God's hand in the middle of life's highs and lows. And today is no different. We're so excited to welcome our beautiful friend, Katie Haun, a Nazarene missionary currently serving with her husband and their 3 children in Sofia, Bulgaria. Welcome to the 1211 podcast, Katie. Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I'm so glad you're here. Katie's story is a powerful testimony of God's faithfulness through every season of life, from childhood faith to adult surrender, from personal trials to the beauty and challenge of saying yes to God's call. Katie has a beautiful story of God's steadfast faithfulness through every twist and turn of life.
We're excited for you to hear Katie's story, but before we jump into the deeper stuff, let's start with some rapid fire fun.
Okay, 10 quick questions. Just say the first thing that comes to your mind.
I'm a little scared.
Everyone is. Yeah, at the beginning of this podcast journey, Tabitha and I were like, what do we want the flow to be like? I'm like, let's just do something lighthearted and fun at the beginning. We'll just do like rapid fire questions. And then every single person that comes on, they're like, that's what I'm most concerned about. I'm like, you're more concerned with rapid fire questions than telling your story. Okay, here we go. All right, so this is the first question. Are you ready?
I'm ready. All right, coffee, tea, or something else? Coke. Yeah, good. Love the smell of coffee. Don't love to drink it. You're not a hot drink person.
Yeah. I like cold coffee, probably better than hot coffee. I will drink hot coffee, but you are your mother's child.
My husband will drink any coffee, and he tries to get me to try all the coffees and hope that one day I'll magically love it. And it hasn't happened yet. 3 kids and 2 college degrees later, and it hasn't happened. I just don't think it's in the cards for me.
Let's wait till your Coke.
Yeah,
right. Your Coke. So what's a food in Bulgaria that surprised you in a good or bad way?
I love muzika, and I am typically not a mixed, mashed foods all mixed together type of person. And this is like a baked casserole with like meat, potatoes, carrots, onions, cheesy stuff on top. And it's one of my favorite things.
So kind of like a shepherd's pie?
Sort of, but without the mashed potatoes.
Gotcha.
On the top.
Yeah.
Because that's a no-go for me with shepherd's pie.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
It sounds yummy. I'll make it for you while I'm here this summer.
That's awesome. Sounds very good.
What is your favorite Bible verse right now in this season of life? One of the Bible verses that I have always clung to is Joshua 1:5 that says, just as I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I'll never leave you or forsake you. I was telling Jennifer and Tabitha earlier I had to be very careful because I wanted to make sure I didn't choose one out of context to mess with Pastor Tim's message from a couple of weeks ago. But this one has always just been one, even from my teenage years, that has stuck with me, that when things are hard, when things are good, the Lord's with me no matter what the season of life is. So that one's kind of just been a life verse for me, I think.
That's really good. That's really good. What I like about that verse is the way you're saying, like, just as I was with Moses, one of the things, even on this story, on this podcast, we talk about it, but I share it often with people. Like, it's the looking back and seeing God's faithfulness that sustains us in the here and now, but also gives us hope for the future. And I love that God pointed Joshua to like, hey, I've been faithful before. I'll be faithful again. So that's such an encouragement. So if you weren't a missionary, what job would you want to try for a day? I mean, we know you've been a teacher, but what else?
Yeah, I don't think I'd want to go back to doing that for a day. I got out of that. I don't know I want to go back in. I would love to own a bakery truck.
Oh.
I want to have a I would say bake stand, but I want to be cooler than that and have like a truck that I could bake all of my favorite things, eat a few of them, sell the rest.
So you like to bake?
I do love to bake. It's one of my favorite
things.
And
is that something that's been like throughout your life, or is that like a newfound thing in this season of your life? Or
I've always liked to bake, but because of where I live, I have to do a lot more things from scratch, which is really fun. So I've learned how to make a few different bread recipes. I make birthday cakes for the kids, cookies, pies. We make Thanksgiving dinner every year for all of our friends in Bulgaria, and I make pumpkin pie, apple pie, pecan, like
From
all
scratch.
of the desserts from scratch. Yeah,
You can't ever go to the grocery store and buy those things.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
They don't even have pie in Bulgaria.
So what do your Bulgarian friends think when you
they
make them
think
all
it's
those
amazing.
pies?
They only come to Thanksgiving dinner for the desserts, I think.
The shirt I'm here for the pies.
Yes, exactly. That's it. Yeah.
They'll believe in Jesus after they have
And
some
pie, yes.
So this like a truck like that could be an awesome ministry opportunity, by the way. So is that like, are food trucks a thing in Bulgaria or no? Because that's a huge thing in the States.
Yes, it's not in Bulgaria, but I like
Like stands, you said, like something like
you can find bakeries in Bulgaria. They're called a sladkarnica, and it's a sweet shop, and you go in and buy like a piece of cake by the slice, and you sit with your friends and have coffee and cake or a dessert of some kind. Most of the time it's like a cake or a pastry or something like this. But yeah,
that's fun.
I think it'd be fun.
That's awesome.
Maybe just for a day though.
For a day. Think about the ongoing, like I think about people that own bakeries and stuff, like, ooh, I bet you would never want to be around sugar. Like after you smell it all.
That might be the reason I only want to do it for a day, because I really like sweets and things. So I wouldn't want to do something that I got so tired of that I wouldn't want to like it anymore. So maybe just one day is enough for me.
Yeah.
And the cleanup.
Yeah.
Yes. Flourish.
Everywhere.
Who is someone, past or present, you would love to have dinner with?
Oh.
I think one more time I'd love to have dinner with Richard Reed.
Yeah.
Only because I felt like we missed that opportunity to have that closure. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been cleaning out recently and found some cards from him, and it's just such a sweet reminder of his presence.
I opened up a box when I got to my mom's to look for something else, and there's envelopes with $2 bills for all the kids that he'd given them. So it's so sweet. I was like, okay.
That's awesome.
So that might be one of them. Always so sweet, always an encouragement.
And you lead better than you can. Yeah. It's one of those situations he makes you better. So what's one thing you always pack when you travel?
I feel like when I travel, I have to pack everything because I have 3 kids. There's nothing left behind. I always travel with my own toothbrush.
Yeah.
And that's probably.
What is there anything like? So I'm kind of, knowing that we're going to go on a little mission trip soon, and it's going to be a very long flight. That's the most nerve-wracking part of this to me. Is
the long flight. Yeah,
the length of the flight. So what is like what's your trick? Like what's your hint? Your suggestion to someone who's making a long flight? What's a must?
My long flight must. I get sick on flights, so I always carry vomit bags with me.
Smart.
So that, because the little paper ones in the airplane, they're not worth anything to me. But I always keep mints in my bag and a mask in my bag, those COVID masks that we have stashed away everywhere, because the smells of foods and the different people on the planes always gets to me. So I can stick a mint in my mouth and put a mask over my face if it gets to be too much. And that's one of my, I have my go bag that I pack, like my headphones, mints, my vomit bags, and a mask, and it goes like in the pocket of the seat in front of me, so it's easily accessible if I need it. But I've learned with kids that there's no preparing to watch a movie or anything on long flights like that. So I don't even bother with coloring books and things that are really fun that people who don't travel with kids get to take a look at. People on the planes that have these nice things, I'm like, oh, look at you.
Yeah.
I'm so jealous. Yeah, must be nice.
Well, I love that suggestion about the mask and the mint. I'm going to remember that because I'm very sensitive to smells, really sensitive.
And especially the airplane foods and things, they heat all of them up and bring them all out at once, so the whole cabin is full of the smell, and you're just like, okay, it's a lot.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. I will remember that.
Yeah. Book or podcast you loved recently?
I really love doing the Holiness Today podcasts. Joshua's been listening to those and got me onto those. I love to read books, but don't often find the quiet time to read books. I read so many books whenever I was doing my degree at Trevecca the last 18 months that now I don't want to touch a book for a little while.
I get that.
So doing a lot of podcasts. I really love listening to teacher podcasts now that I'm not a teacher, because I feel like I can resonate, but I'm not in it anymore to have like the trauma trigger from it. So I like to listen to all of the teacher podcasts where they complain about things, and I'm like, I'm so glad I'm not in that anymore.
That's what affirms I am.
Yes, I know where I'm supposed to be. Exactly.
I agree. Every time I sit down and have lunch with one of my friends that are still in that field and I hear their stuff, I'm like, I leave there and my blood pressure is elevated. And I'm like, I do not need to be in that world anymore.
No.
So, like, I'm right where I'm supposed to be. I'm right where I'm supposed to be. So, what is one word that best describes this season of life for you?
This season right now, as we enter into home assignment and being home for the next 3 months, home, I use that term loosely because
we all love it.
It's split between two places, Tennessee and Bulgaria. But being here in Tennessee back with family and things, it's very fulfilling and refreshing for like our spirits and our souls to get to be with family, and for our kids to get to be with their cousins and to spend time with grandparents and things. Coming out of the season we were just in was very hectic, only because trying to prepare to leave your home for 3 months and your ministry for 3 months and make sure everything is in order when you're not just like an hour drive down the road and you can come back and fix it was a lot of work. And we really want to like make the most out of our last few weeks and month that we're there. So like we pack a million things into those last few weeks, and we really want to touch every single person in our church and all of our friend groups and stuff, because we won't see them for 3 months. And so we really like the last month of our time in Bulgaria was so hectic. We like got on the plane and you just sit down and you're like, you just breathe out like, okay, it's finished. Now we have to move on to the next part, which is also exhausting in its own way, but really fulfilling, especially the first month or so when you're really getting to see everyone for the first time in a year or two, and just getting to eat all of our favorite foods and kind of be back in this culture where we don't have to worry about the language and where we don't have to worry about making sure we don't do culturally something that's inappropriate or something. It's easier when we're here because we can kind of let those guards down that we have to have more in a different setting. But yeah, hectic and fulfilling, depending on which way you want to go, because I feel like I'm right smack in the middle of it, coming out of jet lag a little bit now. But
yeah. What is your favorite thing to do with your family on a day off?
We, a lot of times, just hang at the house because so much of our life is run and go. And so we get up on Saturday morning. If we don't have anything, we make pancakes from scratch. We play around in the backyard. Now that the weather's nice, we go outside and play. They love to be at a playground or at the park. Just spending time together, with the big kids being in school all day. Bulgaria's school days are very long. They're in school from 9 to 5.
Ooh, wow.
And so just having them gone most of the day when we do have a free Saturday that we can all just kind of lazy around and we'll watch a movie. We have, because the church meets in our home, we have a projector downstairs in the living room. And so we just turn the couches, watch a movie night, order something to eat, and hang out.
That's good.
Popcorn.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about Joshua. What are some of your favorite things about him?
Well, we'll just need a whole separate podcast for that. He's really my favorite person. We've been together for so long that I don't really know that anybody else could compare. But I've told him many times, I love that he is very consistent. Does not matter if it's a good day or bad day for him or for me. The consistency is always there. He's a very even keel kind of temperament. I love the way he is with our kids. He's very quick to jump in and play, but also knows when it's time to be serious. Maybe sometimes I have to remind him it's not to be serious. But he was nervous before having kids because he felt like kids never liked him. And he was like, I don't know how I'm going to be with my own kids. Like, if kids don't like me, how's that going to be? And he's just such a great dad, and I love that. And they'll crawl up on top of him and love all over him, and it's just sweet to see. But really just my best friend. Glad I get to do life with him and get to share him with the kids.
Yeah. One of the things that was so cute when you all spoke Sunday, I loved it when he walked up there and Levi yelled out, "Daddy-o, yay, Daddy-o." I was like, oh, it's precious.
And of course, he's an introvert, so that absolutely just made him mortified. He's like, okay, that's great. Thanks, pal.
I loved it. It was perfect.
But our kids don't understand that, like, church services are more like I don't want to use the word reverent, like that they're more like I think that would be one of the things that like in the U.S. is a little different. Like they're more reverent. They're more like a sacred place. Nobody's yelling out in the middle of service. We meet in our home for church, and it's like 30 of us with 15 kids. It's never quiet.
Right.
The kids are always yelling out.
Sure.
If we get done singing a song and Joshua's played the piano, they're like, yeah, way to go, Nadia. It's great, you know? And so we're just kind of used to that. But then when we're back in this setting and we know the culture of church here, it's like, shh, be quiet. We don't just do that.
I loved it. I thought
But it was so everybody else loved it too, so it's fine. And
was good.
it makes me laugh when Joshua gets a little embarrassed anyway, so it was fine.
It was great. Perfect. It was almost like we planted that to happen.
Yeah, we did not. Joshua would be like, absolutely not. You're not having him say that if I told us.
Well, it may start something new. So
Yeah.
Thanks for playing along with our rapid fire fun. That was so good. Now, let's start at the beginning of your story. Tell us a little bit about your childhood.
Yeah, so I grew up in church my whole life. My dad grew up in Baptist church. It's basically a family church where it's all family members. And then my mom grew up at Estill, and for a while we would like go back and forth between the two and kind of split times here and there. And then eventually we just ended up at Estill. Very involved in the church growing up. Always VBS's, revivals, the whole Wednesday night, Sunday night, all of the youth events. I mean, we were always there for all of it. And then at some point when I was a kid, 7, 8, something like that, at a VBS, prayed the whole ABC prayers of salvation, you know, and gave my heart to the Lord then, and was baptized when I was, I want to say 11 or 12. I don't remember exactly when, but it was actually really sweet because I was able to be baptized with my grandfather in the lake after he gave his life to the Lord after having some health issues. The ambulance driver led him to Jesus on the way to the hospital. And so it was really sweet to be able to be baptized with him out in the lake. Our family broke the dock bridge. Well, so that's one of the reasons there's not a dock bridge there anymore, because we all stood on it to get a picture.
Oh, that's funny. I did not know.
Yeah,
Sorry.
you're welcome. There's a picture somewhere of all of our faces as the bridge broke underneath us. But yeah, just, I mean, the church was always a part of our lives. I remember when we were kids, we had cable during football season, but then the rest of the year there was no cable because we were never home. We were always at church events or sporting events. And so, yeah, just always at the church doing things. Joshua and I actually met through a district choir when we were teenagers. I was 11 when I joined the choir. He's 4 years older than me, and we were prayer partners, and that's just kind of how our story started out. Yeah, just always involved in all of the district events, the local church things, and really just, I didn't know there was a life without the church, or a life that never involved the church. And I've told a lot of people, especially in Bulgaria, because there's not that emphasis on church. People will say they're Christian, but they've never been to a church service. And you try to tell people, if you'll just bring your kids to church, they won't realize there's a life without it. It'll just be a part of who they are, and they'll want to be a part of that. And I felt like that was my raising. I never knew that there was an option not to be a part of it, because it was just so ingrained that this is who we are and this is what we do.
Yeah, I think I would say the same thing when people have asked me, like, tell me your testimony. It's like, I don't remember life without Jesus. And Carrington, has said the same thing on this podcast. Like, Jesus was always just a part of it. So you talked about how that's your story. Jesus, the church, has always been a part of it. You accepted him as your savior and walked in obedience to follow him as a young child. So what was your childhood faith journey like, and how, church is a part of it, but like your personal journey as you're trying to kind of figure all that out as a kid and teenager, and how did that early foundation shape your life, and how does it continue to shape your life?
Yeah, I think for me, church was at church, if that makes sense. We always prayed over meals, but I don't really remember like having conversations about Jesus and church and God and all of like the details of it at home or outside of the church building. So I always just equated my faith with the church body and with going to church for events and being a part of services and things. And then I remember as a teenager, Thomas Cromer was the youth pastor, and we had a very large youth group and very involved, and we would do Lenten, challenges. What are you giving up for Lent? Don't just give it up, but replace it with time with God. And I didn't really understand like what that meant,
Right.
because I didn't see that, and I didn't know kind of how that was. Now, like having my own kids, and like Joshua sharing, like their family would do Bible studies every night together before bed, or they would work through a book of the Bible together and things like that. I realized that like that wasn't a part of my childhood so much. So then when I became an adult, I realized like, oh, I'm supposed to be doing something on my own to like build my relationship with God. And so that was a big part of like that transition out of like my childhood or like teen years into adulthood, being married on my own. Joshua is like a devout devotioner, prayer, journaler, like
those disciplines.
yeah, so disciplined. And that's something that I've really struggled with, because he's been doing that his whole life, and it's very second nature to him.
It's routine, like brushing your teeth.
Yes,
It's not been a part of
exactly.
what
If he has not had his devotional time during the day, his whole day is off. And that's something that really, especially with our kids, I wanted to instill that in them. So we'll do a Bible story every night before we go to bed. We sing the doxology together, and we pray the Lord's Prayer every single night. And sometimes it is annoying, because I'm like, I really just need you to get in bed.
Yeah.
But I know that like that foundation is so important. And for me, I like the Daily Grace app, the Daily Grace Company app, or whatever it is, because I can choose a devotional. I can do it all on my phone if I'm out and about, if I'm running around, if the kids are taking a nap in the car and I've just got to sit there for a few minutes, I can pull it up. The Bible app that has all of these devotionals and the daily scriptures and things like this, that has really been a huge part of mine, because I feel like in this season of life with 3 small kids and running around everywhere, I just don't have time in my day to sit for hours and hours and really delve into the Bible like I want. But I can find moments in my day to do these studies and to find ways to grow deeper. And I think that would be just the biggest thing that I learned how to change in my own relationship with God over the years, is that I have to put something into it. It's not just like a constant like giving and pouring from the pastor or from the worship team or from whoever's leading the weekly Bible study that I'm attending, but there has to be that like buy-in from me, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah, an intimate relationship.
Yeah.
You've mentioned the importance of your church family as a child and a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
What was so special about your faith community that you grew up in, and how did it shape you and who you are today?
So many people that I grew up going to church with that were older than me are people that I consider second parents. I mean, Jennifer and Jason and Andrea and Bradley Gore and Kim and Barry Bishop. I mean, there were so many people that were apart. They had kids around the same age as me. Our parents were always together. And knowing that I had those people that were not even like blood family members, but just people that were always around and always there, was so helpful for me in so many seasons of life. But I mean, there's something special about knowing that you have a community of people that if you ever needed them, you can call them. And I had friends at school. I was always with friends at school throughout the week, but like my weekends were devoted to church. And the people that I spent the most of my time with were the people at my church. And that connection, that friendship, that lasted. I don't talk to people I went to high school with anymore. I don't have that relationship with them. I mean, we have Facebook so we can keep up and we can see how life is going, but those people aren't the ones that are sending me a message going, hey, we're praying for you today. And I think just having those people that a Shirley Stevens, an Ann Gore, I mean, a Ruth Gore, any of those people that if I messaged them in a heartbeat and said, I need y'all to pray for me today, they would do it. And I remember being in the youth group and we did I don't even remember what they call it, but like basically it was a partnership between the adults and the youth. And the adults were to pray for the kids and the kids were to pray for the adults. And Ruth Gore got my name, and I know that lady prayed for me every day. And I prayed for her every day. And still I will, every time I see her, I give her a hug and she'll say, I'm praying for you. Yeah. And you don't just get that without a church community that really pours into your life. And I think that's the biggest thing that when we moved to Bulgaria, we didn't have that. Right. And when we first moved, we were completely alone there. And I looked at Josh and I was like, I have never needed the church more in my whole life than I do right now because we have no one. Yeah. And we had decided we weren't going to go to a church because it would kind of light a fire under our butt to get our own church started if we weren't relying on another church to kind of fill that void for us. And we went to a couple of churches for a couple of months just to kind of see how cultures were in churches and things. But that was a really hard season of our life to go without the church. And we have people in America that are messaging us saying, we're praying for you guys, things are great, but it's not the same as having someone there with you. And
that you're sitting across the table.
Yeah, and I had never experienced that because like you said, I mean, you'd never known a life without it. And then all of a sudden you don't have it and you realize, wow, this was a huge part of my development. I mean, I didn't go to Estel until we moved to Bulgaria. We were pastoring in other churches along the way, but always, no matter which church we were at, there was a community of people there that would love and support you and pray for you, and you always knew you had people. And so going to a place where you had no people, it was just kind of this season of loneliness where you're like, what did we sign up for? Why did we do this? Why did you put us in this situation? We need people, if any time right now, more than any, and we're here alone. And so I think that's just, for me, been such an important part of why you need the church, if for nothing else, just to have that community of people to walk alongside you in the good and the bad and the ugly, through all of it. And to not have that, for the first time in my life, made me realize the importance for those that don't believe and have never been a part of a church community, why that's so important and why they need that in their life. And now I feel like I can tell people I had to go a season without that in my life when I had had it my whole life. Yeah. And I know you don't realize it because you've never had it, but you need this in your life and it's good for you. You need it. And yeah.
I would say both of my girls have struggled a little bit with that, even going to college, because the church that they've grown up in is the church you grew up in, and it's truly unique and different than most churches. It really is. And they've struggled going to college because they haven't found that kind of place. And so it's been hard because they're looking for what they had growing up, and it's like, it just doesn't look the same, and that's been hard for them to try to find that place where they found true community. Also, I would say it's interesting that you're talking about like those people in the church that were like your parents and like your family. And Jason and I say that all the time, like our church people, those are our people, right? Yeah. They're the people that are going to show up. They're the people that are going to be there to walk that journey with us. And not long ago, someone was at my house and they saw your picture on my refrigerator. And she said, wait, you know Katie? How do you know Katie? And I said, Katie was my kid before I had my own kids. Right. I always say that about Katie and Kyle. They were my first children before I had
You're welcome. We prepared very well for your children.
They were my children. And so every time I see them, I'm like, oh, those are my kids. And so, yeah. As a children's pastor, I would say this, especially, and I experience this every week, but like the childlike faith that you talked about is really beautiful because it's so unadulterated. Like there's nothing it's just so pure and all. But we all know, like, we have to come to this place, and we all do at different points. I think Henry Blackaby in Experiencing God calls it like a crisis of belief moment. Mm-hmm. And you've talked about like you started walking with Jesus when you were young, but then it was like later on in adulthood, you're living on your own, you're marrying someone who's called to missions, that then like through that journey, it becomes like, oh, this is a faith that I had that was really kind of rooted and grounded in an experience or in a group of people, or in like, I even felt this when I went to Tribeca, like this crisis of like, I've really just believed everything everyone's ever taught me because I trusted them, but I've got to figure out, what do I believe? So like you have to come up with this faith that becomes your own. So talk a little bit about the shift that happened and what surrender looked like for you when you started recognizing, oh wait, there may be more to this than I've realized.
Yeah, so there were a couple moments after I graduated high school that were really pivotal for me personally, but ended up becoming a huge pivotal moment spiritually for me. I actually graduated high school a year early just so that I could leave home, go to Tribeca, and start university. My boyfriend of 5 years already was there. All of my friends from church that were going to Tribeca were a year older than me, and I wanted to leave and go with them and feel like we could start that journey together. And then it just didn't happen. Finances, ACT scores, all the things that like you stress about as a college student, it just didn't happen. And I just got told, no, you can't go. You're just going to have to stay home. And that was a huge like gut punch really for me, because I felt like I had planned my whole life out at the ripe young age of 17. I just knew what was going to happen with my life. And I knew that my boyfriend had one more year at college, and that was going to be our year to be together. We were long distance dating our whole entire life. And so this was going to be our opportunity to be together and be with all my friends and things. And when that didn't happen, everything just kind of crumbled around me, and I was left here. And I was still at this church that meant so much to me, but without the people that meant so much to me.
That's so years, yeah.
Yeah, and all of those people, I could see them living this life that I wasn't getting to live. And now looking back at it, my life would not be what it is today had I gone to Tribeca at that time, because Joshua finished school and I had finished a year at Montlow, and we got married. And then we got called to go live overseas for a year as a part of his master's program. If I was in a 4-year university, there's no way I could have just paused everything and gone to do that. That country where we went to live was Bulgaria, which is where we're living now. And like all of those connections and things, now looking back on it, you see it and you go, okay, God had this plan that I didn't know about, but I really was not happy with God because I had this plan that I had figured out, And
he didn't get the memo.
Yeah, exactly. Come on, could you like make it a little more evident to me, God, in the future? Could you just let me know in advance what your plan is?
Yeah.
But as I was here, going to community college and working and whatever else, really, church wasn't anymore about like being with the people and being a part of this community for me. It was more about really like the depth. And that was the first time that I really was trying to just dive myself into what I believed and figuring out why this God that I served would allow this terrible thing to happen to me. And now I'm like, terrible thing. You didn't go to the college you wanted to. Like, that's not the most terrible thing in the world. But in that moment, perspective.
Right?
But to a high school senior,
absolutely,
it was hard. And so that season of life was very difficult. And then we got married. And we moved to this little bitty town in East Tennessee to a church with 6 people who were none less than 60 years old, and I was finishing up my associates at a different community college, driving every day. We were broke, so broke.
Yeah.
And you just go like, God, why did you call us to serve in this place? Like, we're doing good things. We're good people. And, we make no money. We're over here counting coins out of the laundry room, like to figure out what we can go cheaply buy to eat on this week. And, just tried to, and our parents now were like, why didn't you tell us you didn't have any money? We didn't help you. I'm like, that's the whole point. Right. We were 18 and married and we could do this on our own. We didn't need your help. But so all you people listening that have young kids that think they can do it on their own, go check in. Yeah. They need a little bill. Send us some money. Because they need it. They're just not telling you about it. But
they don't want.
Our pride was real big. We did not want to tell anybody we were struggling, but we were living there we pastored there for a year and then lived there 6 months of that year after we got married. And during that season, like, I realized I don't know what I believe.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'm in this church, this little, and I don't say this like negatively, but a backcountry church.
Sure.
That just is completely different than Estill.
Yeah.
We're singing hymns every Sunday morning off key with an untuned piano, just like, and I'd come from this church that put so much effort and intentionality into what they did. And I had to realize that the church doesn't make the relationship with God that you have. You have to kind of make that on your own and have that intimate and intense, relationship on your own. But that was really that first season of my life where I had to like really just go like, okay, God, I know because I have been taught that you have a plan, but I'm not seeing it. I don't understand it. I need you to be more clearer in your callings and what you're asking us to do. But yeah, I think just pivotal moments like that just absolutely rock your world. And in the moment you feel like everything's just crumbling and God's like, it's fine, just wait. You're okay. You're going to make it.
Yeah, I would have to say for myself, like, it's, but when you're talking, it makes me be reminded that sometimes when we're in the middle of a season that's not going the way we want it to go or the way we had planned for it to go, because we all get there. I mean, it's just how life goes, right? But sometimes we think we have an idea of how it should look. And I think what we learn to be true about God is like the closed door that seems at the time cruel to you.
Yeah.
Like, why is this not working out? Why am I not getting to do this? My dreams are good, God. Like, there's nothing wrong with this.
I'm not trying to go out and do something terrible with my life.
It's good. I want this good thing. Yeah. But during one of our darkest seasons as a married couple, Jason and I, the Lord showed us, because we were getting lots of no's, and it was hard because we're like, okay, we've been obedient. We've done what you've asked us to do. We've, walked away from all these things, and we're just kind of going recklessly into this opportunity, and we're getting no's and no's and no's. And I was getting angry a little bit. Like you're saying, you're angry. Like, okay, God, like we thought we could count on you here. Like you said, to do this, and we're doing it. And we thought that because we're being obedient, it's going to go this way. Right. And then God started really showing me that, Jennifer, if you trust me, then you know that like my closed door is not punishment. It's not to like hurt you. My closed door is always because I'm either protecting you or I'm providing something better for you. Yeah. And we don't see that in the middle of it, but it is a good reminder for us, because some people right now are in a season where they feel like it's closed door after closed door. They feel like their heart's desire is pure and right about it, but they're not getting the thing that they thought they should get. And just being able to hang on and stay the course and trust in Jesus till you get to the place where you can say like you did, now I see it worked out for the best, but in a moment I couldn't. And I'm just thankful that he doesn't always give me my way, because I don't need my way. My way makes a mess of things sometimes. So,
yeah. Now, you mentioned a moment ago about calling, and I can imagine saying yes to a life of missions.
Yes, that word.
Is not just a one-time decision. I'm sure it's a daily thing. Oh, yeah. Maybe even moment by moment. What are some challenges that you have faced in this calling, and what do you tell yourself when it's hard to keep going? What do you do?
Well, you hit it right on the head. It is not a, yes, God will do this one time. It is a very regularly, daily, sometimes moments, saying, okay, God, yes, I'm still doing this. When we first got married, Joshua said, I'm called to missions, and we went and lived overseas for a year in Bulgaria. And I was like, all right, we fulfilled that call, God. All right, check mark, we did it. I felt so confident that we had done what God had called us to do. And, we came back and we lived in Tennessee for almost 7, 8, 9 years, I think. And honestly, I just kind of put missions out of my head, it wasn't part of it, because we were church planting, and I felt like that was a sort of mission. We were leaving churches to go and start new churches, and sometimes without a church body to help you, and you're finding people and you're starting from scratch. And I felt like that was its own type of mission. And we had some friends of ours that we had met when we were in Bulgaria previously, and his daughters were at Trevecca, and he came in to see us, and he was like, if you ever feel the Lord calling you back to mission work, call me. I've got a spot for you on our field. And I just looked at him and said, you're so funny. Thanks for the offer, but no thanks. At that point, I had a baby, and I was pregnant with Caitlin, and I was just like, Don't talk to a 7-month pregnant woman about moving across the world. We're not going there. And of course, my lovely husband, even killed and just, the way that he is, our friend left and he goes, I was like, oh, crap, I thought, well, here we go. Let's just go ahead, throw it out there. I know you're going to say, and he's like, well, I kind of do feel like the Lord might be calling us to something else. And I was like, the Lord might be calling you to something else. The Lord has not called me to anything yet. And I laugh about it, but really it took me months. There's a big difference in saying yes when you're newly married, young couple, it's an adventure and you leave. And there's another difference when your life is established. We had bought a home, we were working, we were not so poor anymore. And you have kids that you're taking away from grandparents and their aunts and uncles and their cousins. Yeah. That was a big thing for me. And I told Joshua, I said, I know you feel like you feel this, but I don't feel it. And we had always said like that God has to call both of us. Right. This is not something that one of us can be really passionate about and one of us cannot. And it took me a while. And my poor, lovely, devoted Jesus loving husband prayed every single day that the Lord would speak to me because he had this clear calling and I just didn't do it. And I just struggled so much with it. And finally one day we were doing a baby dedication at our church and the Lord just kind of spoke to me and said, you said you gave them to me. Are you giving them to me or are you not? And I left. I walked out and sat in my car and Joshua came out and he said, what are you doing? And I said, we're going to somewhere. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, I don't know where we're going, but wherever you think we're going, we're going. The Lord spoke to me about it. I'm not happy about it, but we're going. And he said, really? Like this kid on Christmas morning, and I knew he was so excited about it. And it was one of those things, like, as hard as it was to say, okay, God, I hear your call. Like, I'll answer it. I know this is you telling me this is what I'm supposed to do. It wasn't easy. Looking your parents in the face and telling them that you're taking their grandkids halfway across the world was not easy. Telling your church that you just planted 3 years ago that you were leaving was not easy. And of course, now perspective, looking back on it, you go, God had a plan and things are great and we're doing great things and we love it and it's great. Right. But, those moments were not the only hard moments. I mean, when we were, like I said earlier, sitting around in Sofia the first 6 months without a church family, and you're tired from renovating a house that needs work, and you got 2 kids and no grandparents or help with kids and anything like that.
You haven't established friendships yet.
Yeah, you have no friendships. The kids are not really in school yet. Then they got in school and were sick for 3 months straight and home, and you just sit there and you go like, now God, I said yes. Mm-hmm. I didn't like it, but I said yes, and you just have to constantly remind yourself, like, this is not a one-time calling. It's a lifetime calling of saying, yes, we'll do your will. Whatever it is, we'll do it. And even now, I mean, we're almost 4 years in. There are still moments that I look at Joshua and I go, are we still in this? Mm-hmm. Are we doing good with the calling? Are we being faithful in it? Are we doing what God's called us to do? Could we be doing better? Are we serving God in the best way possible? And we've never gone searching for changes in our ministry. We've never done that. I think a lot of people think pastors go searching for a new church, or they go searching for a new position, or missionaries go searching for a new place to live. We've never done that. Maybe some people are. I'm not one to say because I'm not in their relationship with God, but God has never given us that opportunity to go, what do we think we want to do next? Let's start looking around and job hunting or whatever. But it has always been the Lord kind of nudging and putting this desire on our heart and this excitement for a new place and a new calling. And, we are still excited about where we're at, and we're still loving where we're at. And we just have to continue to give God that yes every single day. When our kids look at us, Jude right now, his big thing is, am I going to be a teenager and be in school in Sofia? And I'll say, I don't know. And he'll say, I love being, now that we're back in the States, he'll say, I love being with my cousins. Am I going to always live away from my cousins? I don't know. And that's hard as a parent to have to look at your kid and go like, we don't have the luxury that some people do of planting roots and living there for their whole life, and those are days that it's hard because I can control my own calling for God, but my kids don't understand that.
Okay.
And so trying to, we tell them missionaries are people that God calls to go live other places or to serve, places where maybe they wouldn't have served before, to tell people about Jesus. And they know that they are missionaries. Their parents are not just missionaries, but they also are missionaries in the fact that they don't get to choose where they go to school. They don't get to choose if they live close to their cousins or their grandparents. And, we've told them, we say yes when God tells us to do something, and you guys are saying yes to it. And for a 7, 5, and 2-year-old, they don't understand that all the time. But I'm hoping, with the perspective things that we talked about earlier, that one day they'll look back on this and go, wow, God was really doing some great things. I didn't like it at the time because I was having to learn a second language and be in a culture that the school's different. But
yeah, I think that your reminder that was true for all of us, not just those in missions. And I think it's something we can tend to forget, that God is calling all of us all the time to things. Like, it can be something as simple as the hard conversation you need to have with someone at your workplace, or, extending love or grace to your neighbor who you don't like how they leave their trash can out 5 days past pickup, or whatever, whatever it is.
Personal things there.
No, I don't have any neighbors like that. I don't. It's like things that get us all worked up in our lives, right?
Yeah.
But I think and being reminded, our yes to God and it doesn't matter who you are.
Yep.
Your yes to God is never a one-time thing, because our journey with God is constantly transformative, and He's always calling us to deeper places. And so our yes to God is a moment. It's daily. It's moment by moment. Tavis has heard this advice, but what I say to people when they're like, I don't know what God's will for my life is, I don't, because we want to know it 5 steps down the road. And often we don't know that. We don't know how long we're going to be in Bulgaria. We just know that for today, that's what God's called us to do, right? And so just sometimes we get, we have a hard time saying yes in the moment because we're borrowing trouble from down the road, when really all God's asking you to do is to say yes to the next thing He shows you.
Yeah.
Whatever that is, in this moment, in the next moment, just continuing to say yes to the next thing that He shows you, and trusting that we won't always like it. And I think that's a lesson that in what you're sharing with us too is, I think sometimes people think that if I'm in the will of God, it's always, it's going to be easy.
It's always going to be roses and butterflies.
I'm going to love it. It's going to be something I find great fulfillment in. But listen, Moses was called to do a lot of things that he didn't love. And that he wouldn't have signed up for. And he was like, really, God, like, I got to have this conversation. Or you want me to do this? And that's the truth for anyone who's ever really gone with God, fully surrendered. It doesn't necessarily mean life is easy. It doesn't mean that you're not scraping pennies to pay for something. It doesn't mean that you're not feeling lonely, because you can be right in the center of where God wants you to be. And your circumstances, Paul talks about it. I've learned to be content in all circumstances. Because his circumstances were not good when he was going with God. So thank you for that reminder, because I think many of us need that reminder, who maybe are letting fear or lack of comfort stand in the way of just doing the thing God's calling you to do.
Mm-hmm. What does keep you grounded in those moments when that doubt, that fear, the loneliness creeps in, and your children are asking these types of questions? What keeps you grounded?
Joshua.
Yeah.
Because he's such like a very same across the board kind of person, a steady person. When I'm having he has those bad days, I never know about them. He'll write about them in his journal. I mean, sometimes I'll know about them, but most of the time, like, it's suppressed. He's not really going to talk about it much, unless it's a longer season where, you just kind of, you can feel that it's there. But when I have those hard moments, I can look at him and say, like, this is not easy. And I think it's important that whether it's your spouse or it's someone else that you trust, that you have someone that you can tell that to.
Yeah.
One of the things that is harder is that we have so many people that support us in churches that pray for us that you almost feel like you have to always put on this, like, all things are great, things are wonderful, everything's going fabulous. And it's not.
Which
in any church, in any
facade in Christianity, period.
Yes.
The F word, right?
Yes.
Christian F word, fine. Everything's fine.
Everything's fine, yeah. But, and we call family, and we want to talk to family and see how life is doing. We don't want to call them and tell them about all the terrible things that are happening here, because they're going to say, well, then y'all just come on back home.
But you don't need that.
Which we don't need that, because that doesn't help when you're in that season. And so really, because he is so routine in his devotional and prayer time, I know that if I tell him, hey, I'm struggling this week, like, I want to go back to America where I don't have to figure out how to say Tylenol in Bulgarian. And
like you do.
Yeah, snot. I was teaching the kids on Sunday in children's church how to say snot in Bulgarian. But like, when everything requires so much mental effort, that I can just look at him and go, like, I'm not there mentally today. I don't want to be here. I don't know where I want to be. Like, I just don't, like, this is not for me today. I'm struggling. Sure. The call is there. We're doing the right thing. Everything's fine. Yeah. But today's a hard day. I know that he'll pray with me. He'll pray for me. And he has people that he'll talk to about it that will help him figure out how to help me or whatever. And especially with kids, a lot of times I feel like we have to kind of keep this brave face and this facade on for them. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they'll catch me in a moment and I'll be crying. They're like, what's wrong, Mom? And I'm like, it's just a hard day. I just kind of miss Tennessee today. Or I just kind of wish that I could go to the grocery store and find the things I need to make today and not have to completely redo my grocery list when I get to the store because they don't have what I need, or whatever. And I think just having that authenticity with someone, whoever it is,
be real.
To just be real and to say, this isn't great. I've also learned that I can have that with God. I always felt like when I was a kid, like, you pray for Thanksgiving with God. You don't tell him when you're aggravated or when you're frustrated. But I have learned that I can pray to God and say, God, I don't understand this. I'm really frustrated. I really could use some encouragement. Could you give me a light at the end of this tunnel I feel like I'm in? And just kind of have that encouragement from God as well. But I do think some kind of a confidant that you can reach out. I mean, even pastors and leaders in the church, you can't talk to your church people about the problems that are happening in the church because they're a part of your church, and we're not going to go talking to the church people in Bulgaria about how much we miss life in Tennessee or our family back home, or that we missed out on a funeral or a birthday party or a graduation celebration or something. But, just to have someone that no matter what, whether it's the good or the bad, you can go to them and say, I'm really just struggling today, and I need you to know that I'm okay. I'm not like jumping ship. Nothing's like terribly wrong, but life is hard today, and I just need you to know about it,
Yeah, and I think that's a good reminder that we have to be careful whose voice we listen to, because Jason and I have experienced this in our own call, like people that were well-intended Christian people, but there were seasons we didn't need them to say, well, just don't do it then. Or, is he really calling it? Like, maybe he's not calling you to do it, right? Yeah. Through our adoption journey, we had people that said, well, maybe like it took forever, right? And maybe he's not really calling you to do that. We knew he was calling us. It didn't mean that it was easy. It was hard. It was expensive, all these things. Yeah. And those voices, they didn't mean harm. They really just were trying to make life easy for us. Yeah. And that's not, so really.
Sometimes life isn't easy when you're saying yes to God's call.
It's usually not easy when you're saying yes to God. And I think as Americans, we have a hard time with that idea. And so I think you have
live in a habit your way Burger King culture where you get what you want when you want it, and you get a side of fries with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have to be careful who that person is and the voices that you allow into your ear about those kinds of things, because not everyone's heard from God what you've heard from God. Yeah. And so it doesn't mean they're trying to detour you, but it's not their call, it's your call. They haven't heard from God. Yeah. And then also I think the testimony that you gave of when Joshua was feeling called, you weren't yet, as a family, recognizing that God really, it's a sacrifice and it's a calling for everyone. One of the things I would say is, and this goes back to our adoption journey, I knew we were called to adopt before Jason did, just like you and Joshua. I knew. And for a while, I tried to be the voice that would convince Jason that we were called to adopt, right? And I would talk to him.
That ain't gonna work like that.
So exactly what Joshua did. The Lord convicted my heart. You stop talking to him about it and let me take care of it. And so for 6 months, I prayed constantly, like, God, if it's not your will, then take the desire out of my heart.
Yeah.
But if it is, convince Jason of that, because I don't want to be the one that convinces him of that. And 6 months later, we were sitting there eating a meal, and I remember where we were sitting, and he says, we're supposed to be adopting. And I was shocked, which just says a lot. It says a terrible thing about me. And I was shocked that he said that. But, so yes, the Holy Spirit will do what the Holy Spirit does. And so if you are someone that's listening and you're in a situation in a marriage where it's one of you's feeling called, the other one's not, or you're not, it's not for you to convince them.
Yeah.
Because it's not your call. It's God's calling on your
If
life.
God's
So
called it and
he'll do it.
he wills it, then he'll make it clear to everyone that's involved.
Absolutely. So I would say if you're struggling with that, just someone that's listening, like, just keep giving it to the Lord. Keep praying every day and ask the Holy Spirit to do what the Holy Spirit did. Because just like the Holy Spirit spoke to you in that moment, right?
Yep.
He'll speak to, and Jason says to me, I can't get away from it. It's everywhere I turn. It's on the TV. It's on the radio. And like in that moment, he knew, like,
You're like, you're welcome. I've been praying for this for 6 months.
into your life, friend. I love you so much. I've been praying this into your life. And so it was. But
He's like, well, now that I've said yes, would you please stop? Because I can't get away from it.
Right. Yes. And the other moment that you talked about that really was so linked to me, Katie, was when you were talking about that moment, that baby dedication, where God said to you, do you really trust me with them or not? I remember the day I was driving down Parkway Road, not far from here, and I remember the spot I was on the road. I don't really remember that I ever would say I've heard God's audible voice, but it's as close as one of 2 times in my life, as close as I've ever heard. And I was struggling. My girls were little, but Carrington really has probably known she was called since she was maybe in 1st grade. And because even in 1st grade, she's like, I'm going to be a teacher and a missionary. I don't think and she would preach constantly when she was little and play church. It was in her heart. And that thought came to my mind of like, what's that going to mean? Like, what if she has to go on the other side of the world? And I mean, they're little. Like, they're not going anywhere anytime soon, but I'm worried about it. And I remember the spot on the road where the Lord said the same thing to me that he said to you on that day of that dedication. Jennifer, you said you gave them to me, but did you give them to me or not?
Yeah.
And do you trust me with them or not? And it was a pivotal moment in my life where I realized it might be hard, and there may be a day that they're on one side of the country and I'm on the other of the world, but I don't want them to be next door to me if they're not in God's will.
Yeah.
I want to do wherever they are that they're following the call of God, because that's the best and safest place for them to be. Yeah. So even if it's sacrificial, like your family, it's not just your parents, your your in-laws, your sister, like your brother, your sister, all these people, like everybody, it affects everybody, because it's a call that has a ripple effect. So I would just encourage those that are, that have the opportunity to speak life into someone who's called, feel what you feel, because it is true. There's grief and there's loss in that, and there's sacrifice in that, but support them in their call, because there are days that you're like thinking, I don't know how long I can do this. Right? And so you need people that are like, do the thing God's called you to do, whatever that is. I just want to end on this a little bit, just unpack this briefly before we close out with our listeners. But I know that so much of your story has been about God's faithfulness and just life kind of moving along, and then those kind of interruptions. But I know that there's been seasons of struggle and heartbreak for you too. Maybe like times where, like the moment where you didn't get what you wanted for college, that maybe would have threatened to detour your life. So unpack maybe just another time or two that was like pivotal for you. It could have been a hard moment, foundational kind of shaking moment, or it could maybe be even a pivotal moment that was a huge celebration. But how did God meet you in those spaces? And just maybe unpack a couple of those for us.
I think the other biggest moment in my adult life that really just rocked me was when my parents were going through their divorce, separating and divorcing. I wasn't even at home. Like, I was grown and married, and as hard as it was, you think, okay, but I wasn't at home. I wasn't a kid. I didn't have to split time between families, and all this stuff. But that season was so hard for me because there were so many question marks. There were so many unknowns. There were so many seasons where, is is this all going to work out for the good?
Right.
Is it not? We were living just down the road and trying to make sure that we stayed connected with both sides. It really affected my brother, who was at home during the time, and getting ready to go to college. It was a huge moment that I believe really changed a lot of his trajectory going into college. And I felt like, that like phrase, like, oh, if you're the first daughter, granddaughter, first, all these things, like you have this particular personality. That is me 100%.
Absolutely.
And I am like the fixer of all things, and I need to make this right, and I need to fix this, and I will do whatever I have to do to make this right and to fix it. And it was in that season of life that God kind of just released that from me, that like, you may feel like you need to be the fixer of all things, but I'm the fixer of things, and I will take care of things. And again, that verse just kept coming to mind, like, I was with Moses in these hard moments, and I will be with you, and I will continue to be with you. I'm not going to leave you now, and I'm not going to leave you later. We've got this, and it's fine, but you do not have to carry this all on your own shoulders. Yeah. And, when you're a young kid at home and your parents divorce, you feel helpless because you're being shuffled between places and you don't get to make those decisions. But as an adult, I felt like, well, I'm grown and I can tell you what I think about it, and I can fix this the way I feel like it needs to be fixed. And I'm not a helpless kid. Like, this is my life. Yeah, I have an opinion, and I'm not scared to tell you because I don't live in your house anymore,
Yeah.
But just having that freedom and that release from the Lord to just like, of course, you still have that burden and you still have that desire to want to fix it. But for the Lord to just kind of say, this is not your battle. You have other things going on. You have more things to worry about. This is not for you. I think that was a big part of growing up for me. We had just gotten back from Bulgaria. We'd been back a year when they split up, and you think like, I had to go a whole year without my family, and now I'm back and my family is being ripped apart, and we're being pulled in different directions and everything else. And it was just such a release to go, God can handle this. It's not my battle. It's not my problem. Of course, I can have opinions, and I can have the things that I want to say and try to fix the things that I can. But ultimately, it was such a release for me that God said, you don't have to do that. This is mine. It's not yours, and I can deal with that. And I've kind of been able to take that further into life. Like when things happen that are out of my control, when I'm halfway across the world and I can't do anything about it. Right. I mean, I could sit and cry and go like, I really just want to be home so I can fix it. And I have to just kind of remember, you can't fix this. This is not yours to fix. You can love them. You can pray for them. You can care for them. But I think it was that season that really prepared me to be so isolated from family and the problems that are here that I can't just immediately be a part of and fix. To just be able to say like, we will help you however we can from here. We love you. We're praying for you. Yeah. And that's all that we can do. The Lord has the rest of it. And I think that's just been a huge part of that transition in my mind. I think just that I don't have to be in control of all of it. The Lord has it, no matter if it's in my own personal life, if it's in the life of the people that I love, if it's a church that's going through transition that I can't do anything to help them with when it's struggling or, whatever. I mean, all of the things, just to have that understanding and that almost the approval of God, like, you can let this go. This is not yours to be a part of. So, yeah.
Good.
And your life looks much different than a lot of our listeners. Most of them,
maybe a little bit.
Well, most of them haven't traveled across the world to say yes to a life of missions, like you and your family have. But some of them may feel God calling them. What would you say to someone who's listening right now who feels like they want to say yes, but there's fear, or maybe they don't feel they have what it takes to say yes. They feel stuck. They feel hopeless because life has taken them somewhere that they didn't expect to take them. Just checking boxes, enjoying the comfortable life. How can they get out of that and say yes to what God's calling them to?
When God called us to go to Bulgaria, it was during COVID, and it was this like quarantine. No one's coming over. No one's going out. Your kids are home 24/7. You know, you're getting groceries delivered to the front door without talking or speaking to anyone. And I'd really just say that season of quiet was really important for me. I think without that season of quiet, I don't know that I ever would have said yes, because life gets loud. It's busy.
Yeah.
With or without kids, life is loud.
Yeah.
But particularly with young kids, it's really hard to find those quiet moments. And for us, when Joshua was trying to convince me that we were called, he would say, like, would you just spend 30 minutes every day just in the quiet and just try to listen, see if God tells you. Maybe he won't. I'm like, yeah, right, you know he will. And I don't want to be in the quiet because I don't want him to talk to me.
We don't want to hear
exactly. And I think that would just be my thing. Find a quiet moment. Put the phone away.
Yeah.
I'm really bad at the end of my day when I just want to lay in the bed for a few minutes and scroll on my phone to be in the nothingness and clear my head after a long day with kids or whatever. But even if it's walking the driveway to go get your mail and taking a few extra trips up and down the driveway, or sitting in your car with a Sonic drink by yourself for 30 minutes or something, you would be amazed at what God will say to you when you just give him the space to do that.
He'll bring calm into your life.
Yeah.
Like he will hush a lot of the noise if you carve out the space for him to do that.
And it's hard. It's not an easy thing.
No, it's so hard.
When you're in the car, there's the radio. Your phone buzzes. My watch is going off like 14 times right now. I mean, there's always these distractions. And to consciously say, like, I'm not even going to take my phone on this walk.
Exactly.
What?
Yeah.
You would take a walk without your phone? Why would you ever do that? But to intentionally set aside time if you feel like the Lord might be calling you to something, or you feel like, I just have this unsettling. Something is
divine discontent.
Yeah,
right?
something is not content with me. I don't know what it is. I can't get clarity. Just find a quiet moment or two. I would love to get up before my children every morning, but when I do, they wake up earlier.
Right.
And I remember Gwen Castleman would get up every morning, and I would come downstairs if I was at a sleepover at her house, and she would be sitting at that kitchen table with her Bible and her journal open every morning. And I would love that for my life. It's not in the cards for me at this particular moment with 3 children who hear a footstep and they're like, oh, Mama's up, I can get up.
Right.
But
there's a time where you can say, hey, I need my 20
yes,
time to sit down.
Yes. And so I think just if you have the space to say, every morning I'm going to wake up 30 minutes earlier and I'm just going to sit in the silence, do that. If you're taking a lunch break and you can sit in your car and have your lunch break in silence, do that.
Park,
do a walk in the park, whatever it works into your schedule and however that looks for you, do that. And you'd be amazed at the way that the Lord would speak to you and just how clearer your head is. Our brains are so fogged up with social medias and all the news and the demands of life and the list of things you got to get done. And I find myself in the quiet going, was that the laundry I just heard? I need to remember to go turn that over. Or was that, did I write this down on my grocery list? I'm going to forget that. Even when I'm trying to have quiet times with God, your brain doesn't just automatically shut. It's an exercise.
We train ourselves.
Yes.
It's an exercise, and it's a discipline that we learn as we go. Something we have to be consistent about, just practicing that, right?
So definitely find time.
Learning to practice that way, and we get better at it the longer we do it. And also, the more we do it, the better we get at it. But also, the more desperate we get for that, we recognize our need for it.
Yeah.
And the more we crave that and want that.
Yes.
Just like working out at the gym. The first few times you go, you're like, I hate this.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got those people in your life who, like, going to the gym for them is like anything else they do during the day.
Yeah.
They do. And when they don't
go
do
without
it, they miss it. And I think that's like our time with the Lord. It's whatever we train our minds and our hearts and our bodies to need. And then it just becomes habit for us because of discipline.
When they say it's like 20-something times you have to do something to make it a habit. So the first time you sit down in the silence with God, you're not going to be like, oh, wow, the Lord just really spoke to me. I mean, he might, but probably not,
And you
just continue to do it.
And even when you don't feel when you don't necessarily hear anything, just recognize that there's value in the discipline for making the space. And then, continuing to just figure out whatever. And this is the thing I think it's important what you said. It's not regimented. It's not legalistic. You have to figure out what works for you at the season of life that you're in. And you can't just always be looking at someone else and going, well, I can't do what they do, so I just won't do anything.
Yeah.
I can't spend an hour a day, or I can't spend whatever. Won't do anything. Find what you can do. Even if it's just 5 minutes 3 times a day or 10, just find those spaces that you can carve out. So, well, Katie, thank you for sharing your story with us. Your courage to follow Jesus into the unknown and your honesty about the struggle and the joy of it all is really a gift. So God's faithfulness truly shines through your life, and I'm very grateful to know you.
And to our listeners, your story matters too. And you may not be serving in another country, but your life right where you are is a testimony of God's restoration and redemption. And when you share it, you make room for someone else to find hope.
So here's our challenge to you. As always, tell your story. Let God use it to bring freedom, not just to you, but to others who need to hear it.
And be sure to tune in next time when we'll sit down with a remarkable woman who shares a deeply moving journey of faith, loss, and healing. Growing up the youngest of 6 on a farm, she learned early what it meant to be tough, but nothing could have prepared her for the heartbreak that would come later in life.
After raising her son in the church and sharing an unbreakable bond with him, tragedy struck. What followed was a season of unimaginable grief, a storm of pain, depression, and questioning that left her crying out to God in desperation. Yet even in her anger and her heartbreak, she would come to see how God had been protecting her all along and how he had helped her find strength to live again. Her story is raw, real, and filled with the kind of hope that only comes from walking through fire and finding God still there.
You don't want to miss it. Make sure to meet us back here next Tuesday when episode 20 drops.
Until then, keep living your story and let it be one that points to Jesus.
Blessings, friends.